I'll never forget buying our garage fridge and looking at my wife and being like, babe, we made it. This is awesome. And yet we sold all of that, moved into this 45-foot toy hauler, and realized that you don't really need as much as you think you do.
This is A Joyful Rebellion, the podcast that explores that moment you realize the life and success you worked so hard to create didn't come with all the fulfillment you thought it would. I'm your host, James Walters, and I want you to be the author of your own story. Each week, I connect with people who inspire bold answers to the question, what do I do now to create a life I love? If you're ready to start answering that question for yourself, you're in the right place. So let's start a joyful rebellion. $500,000 a year, big house in Texas with an in-ground pool and even a refrigerator in the garage, and he walked away from all of it. Drewbie Wilson is a sales coach, author, and entrepreneur who spent years climbing to the top of someone else's ladder. Then he sold the house, packed his family into a 42-foot camping trailer, and built something that actually fit for him. He coaches sales professionals and entrepreneurs through his brand, Call the Damn Leads, and he's the author of several books on mindset, discipline, and building a life by design. We talk about discipline over motivation and why people around you are either fuel or friction. We talk about what it really costs to keep chasing someone else's definition of success and what freedom actually looks like when you stop performing it. If you've ever wondered what would happen if you just walked away, this one's going to stay with you. Drewbie Wilson, thank you so much for being here on A Joyful Rebellion today.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I'm very excited to be here, very excited to hopefully share some wisdom and knowledge with the listeners. One thing I will say, time is your most valuable asset. So if you hang out with us today, you listen all the way to the end, know how much I appreciate you investing that finite resource, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you get some value out of it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. And for everyone who is listening, if you've been here before, you know that this is not exactly a business or a sales focused podcast. It's more about life, and it's about getting more out of life. And that's what I want to talk to you about. You help people who are generally in sales and business who need to get sales. You help them get more of those and create a mindset to be able to be more successful. But I would argue that everyone, everywhere, no matter who they are or what age they are, we're all in sales. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. You know, whether you're trying to sell yourself on doing the thing that you don't want to do, whether it's going to the gym or making the phone call or reaching out to that person that you need to reach out to. There's a million lists of to-dos that we've all created for ourselves. And more than that, when you're in a group setting, if you're trying to convince someone that we should all just play hooky today and go to the theme park, right? That's selling in itself. If you have kids, you're literally selling them every day on take a shower, clean up your mess, go to your, like, this is sales. And what I find so interesting about it is that, to me, sales is really about being of service. If you can help someone along, like you said, if you can help someone find a way to live a better life or have more joy or just do the thing that they've been wanting to do but kind of needed that permission, I mean, that's service. And to me, a great service person is going to make sales day in and day out.
And one of the big things that you propose for people who are in sales is always be on the follow-up. So even if you're not trying to get a sale, maybe you're just trying to get buy-in, like you said, to, hey, go to bed on time or eat healthy or brush your teeth, whatever it might be. It's the follow-up. It is getting those people engaged with you and know that you care about them and that you are in service to them. And that applies to everyone, no matter what it is you're selling. Does that ring true for you?
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing, and I'm going to put this out there as a challenge to the listener today. I want you to go into your phone, find 5 people that you haven't talked to in a while, and send them a message. Send them a meme, send them a funny GIF, tell them you love them. Like, just reach out to those 5 people, man, because ultimately what I've learned and I'm calling myself out as much as everyone else that's listening, like, we all say, hey, I'm going to do that thing. Hey, I should reach out to that person. Hey, they're on my mind. I'm going to do that later. But we never do it later. So, like, if God's putting that on your mind in the moment to reach out to somebody, take 30 seconds and do that, because you never know when that message is going to land right at the perfect time to either have that person have much more, like, in their day. Maybe there's more joy. Maybe they're thinking really negative thoughts, and all of a sudden you just come out of nowhere, and it's like, that's divine timing. And so I really encourage you guys to go out there, pick up your phone, find 5 people that you've been needing to reach out to, and just send them a quick message. And make a habit of this. Try to do that every single day. Just reach out. It doesn't have to be 5. It could be 2, it could be 10. But, like, just reach out to someone every day that you haven't talked to in a while, and just let them know that you care about them, that you're still there for them, and see what's new in their world. You never know what doors of opportunity that can open up for you, and not just from, like, a financial or a business perspective, but there's relationships that you've been meaning to rekindle, or people that you've been wanting to make an impact on, and the only way to do that is to pick up the phone and reach out to them.
That's a great point. And everything we've talked about so far is talking about being in action, and being in action is one of the quickest cures to procrastination and to that lack of motivation. But one of the things that you talk about a lot is discipline beats motivation. Talk a little bit about when it was in your life that you realized that was really true and not just something the grown-ups say all the time.
Oh, man. So the biggest thing I would say from a discipline beats motivation standpoint is that motivation fades. It's real easy to pick up your phone and see somebody doing something and get excited about it, get motivated. But when it comes time to walk out the door and put your shoes on and do the damn thing, that's a lot more difficult, right? That motivation's gone in an instant. And so for me, what I really learned, I've been on this crazy journey for a long, long time, and really diving into personal development right around 2016, 2017. My son had just been born. I had put on like 80 pounds during my wife's pregnancy because I was eating all the Thanksgiving dinners with her while she was going through all her cravings. And I kind of like looked at myself in the mirror one morning, and I was like, dude, your body's trying to tell you to wake up at like 5 a.m. every day, but you just smash the snooze button, you roll over, you go back to sleep, and you're not even really sleeping. You're just tossing and turning for like 2 hours. It's like, maybe you need to get your ass out of bed and go do something with that time. And that's what I started doing. I told my wife, I said, hey, I'm going to go for a walk. She's like, what? It's 5 a.m. I said, I know. I'm going to go for a walk. Don't worry about it. There was a neighborhood park right behind us. It had a nice little track. So I was like, I'm going to go walk the track. She's like, okay, dude, whatever. And I started listening to YouTube motivationals, right? Jim Rohn, Eric Thomas, Ed Milet, Andy Frisella, all these guys that were some of the old school guys that had been around for a while, and they have all those like Motiversity mixtapes and all these things. And so I was like, I'm just gonna listen to these as I'm walking and just try to get a feel for what are the people that are living the life that I want, or that have lived the life that I'm kind of leaning towards. What are they doing? How do they think? How do they operate? Because I don't want to say I had a negative attitude, but I really wasn't positive either. I was kind of just in that middle ground. And I think the middle ground is where a lot of people get stuck. And that's why I think the discipline's so important, because motivation can take you from that really negative place to a middle ground, but it doesn't necessarily always take you to the positive spot. And so for me, it was every day getting up when my body told me to, throwing on some motivational content and listening to it. But it doesn't matter how motivated you are when it's cold, when it's raining, when it feels like 115 degrees outside. You don't necessarily want to go do those things. And it was just showing up every day and doing it whether I wanted to or not that led me to understand that even on the days when I wasn't motivated, the discipline is what kept me going. It's the idea that if I just keep doing the thing, I will get the result. It does not matter how you slice it. If you do the thing enough times, you will ultimately get the result that you're looking for, or something close to it. Now, there's a whole line that we could go down of variables and what have yous about that, but ultimately, whatever goal you set for yourself, If you show up and do the work consistently every day for as long as it takes, you're eventually going to get to that goal. And that's why discipline is so much more important than motivation, because when you start the journey, you're real excited, you're real motivated, but 6 months in, 9 months in, a year into it, if you haven't hit your goal yet, that motivation was gone after week one. So you have to stay disciplined, and that's really why that phrase exists for me.
That's really insightful, because the next thing I want to ask you is, on those walks at 5 a.m., when you were listening to, as you described them, the old school, like the OG motivational people who were talking about a lot of these things, is that when you started to really understand what being in that mindset of discipline over motivation, what it was going to require of you?
I think, yeah, it was a good start. I didn't realize until like 6 months in what it was truly going to take to make the sacrifices necessary. And what I mean by that is, if you want big change in your life, you have to make big changes. And I think that's the thing that scares most people, is they're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of someone saying, oh, well, you've changed and this, that, what have you. But at the end of the day, I forget what the phrase is, but it's like, you can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you. And it took a little while for me to really understand that. But it's, if you surround yourself with people that are always bitching about the news or the government or the price of gasoline or the price of groceries, or that it's cold, it's hot, it's what, like, that's the mindset that you get into. That's just how you operate. And so listening to the OGs and really realizing that as I started to progress in my own life, I felt inspired to share that with the people around me in my circle at that time. And I kept hitting these brick walls. Right? It's like I'm going to my friends that I've known for years and years, and I'm telling about this stuff, and I'm talking about these guys I'm listening to, and they're like, whatever, man, woo-woo nonsense, like, who cares, man? Let's smoke a joint, let's drink some beers, let's do whatever. And you start to realize that they're not bad people, but they're not the people that are going to get you to the level that you want to be on. And so a lot of the sacrifice comes in the relationships that you change in your life, and then the mindset that you start to develop when you realize that you can't change other people unless they want to change. Just like you can't change yourself, your habits, your decisions, unless you truly want to change. And that's why it's so important to just focus on doing what you need to do and letting yourself be an example for all the people that need to see that in order to take that step for themselves.
I love that. And you hit on one of my favorite sayings ever. And I've said that I would get this tattooed on my arm. I don't think I ever will. I think I'll just memorize it and say it to people a lot. But the saying is, nothing changes if nothing changes. So until you started to make that change, and I want to rewind just a little bit, because I want to connect two dots. Like, you mentioned that your wife's pregnancy, you're having a kid, and you started eating the snacks, you started eating the meal, you were feeding yourself something, and you were just going along with it. And then one day you realized, oh man, I'm 80 pounds overweight. And then you got to a place where you started feeding yourself these YouTube videos. You started feeding your brain all of this motivational stuff that got you to a point where you're like, man, I need to be a different person than I was a year ago. So it really is like literally what you feed yourself, you put into your mouth and your body, but also it's a lot of what you feed your mind. And that also connects the dot with what you were saying about the people you're around, because the things they aspire to, the things that motivate them, the things that they get interested in, that feeds your brain as well. And it's going to go one direction or the other. And like you said, enough times of repeating something, you're going to get to a result. Sometimes it's a result you don't love so much. And sometimes it's a result that you're like, oh yeah, I meant to do that. I'm shocked it happened, but I meant to do that. Talk a little bit about the first time you started seeing results, like when you were trying to make a breakthrough with a client and they were just stuck and they were like, man, I'm trying to hit this goal at work or in my life or whatever it is, and they were just in their own way. Do you have a story that illustrates that and how they got through it?
I've got probably several. I would say one of the biggest ones is I was working with a client that was really trying to step into their own lane as far as business and entrepreneurship. And they had a regular, W-2 job. They're working 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever their timeline was. And they're asking me, how do I get out of this job so that I can start this business? And ultimately the question is, how much do you make? Right? What's your time worth? And there's a long drawn out process to this, and I won't make you guys go through the whole thing, but we'll give you the too long didn't read version for the podcast episode. And so when I started asking him, hey, what's your time worth? He couldn't really tell me. He's like, I make $20 an hour. And I'm like, okay, great. So if I put on a hood and I carry a big scythe and I knock on your door and I'm like, hey, my name is Death. You have 24 hours left to live. Here's $20. Are you going to come with me and do whatever I want to do for the next hour? And he's like, well, no, not if I only have 24 hours left to live. And it's like, okay, well, can you guarantee me that you're going to wake up tomorrow? Can you be 100% certain that you're going to have 5, 10, 20 more years to get to the thing that you want? Because I certainly can't guarantee those things. Like, I'm not blessed to have unlimited lifetime. Like, I know whatever I wake up and get today is what I'm hoping I get tomorrow, but there's no guarantee there. And so once we started understanding that your time, your energy, your effort are the true finite resources that exist, as I mentioned at the start of this show, anytime you've ever been in a money situation, you always find a way to get the money that you need to do the thing that you need to figure out. Like, that's just inevitable. I mean, and I think everybody listening to this can look back on a situation where they thought, there's just absolutely no way this is going to work. I'm never going to be able to afford that. I'm never going to be able to get that thing or go to that place or whatever. And you always find a way. God always provides a way for you to get there. But it comes back to your time, your energy, your effort. Where did you spend them? What did you spend them on? Who did you spend them with? And how did you make sure that they were very, very intentional? And so what I worked with him on is a process I call the 4 6s. So to me, there's really 4 areas of life that matter. Rest and recovery is number 1. Listen, I'm old enough now that I need my beauty sleep. I spent plenty of days staying up on 3-4 day benders when I was a kid, doing all the stuff that we're not supposed to do in life. And we all know, man, after like 24 hours of being awake straight, you're almost useless. Your decisions are worse. You can't operate as fast. Like, it's just not a good place to be. So I've learned rest and recovery, number 1 important thing. And then what ends up happening for people is we put our business second. Because we know we have to work and we know we have to make money and we know we need to provide, especially for men. Now, women, obviously, you feel the need to provide in different ways too. But for men, I think there's just this internal and external factor that says you're supposed to earn, provide, and take care of the people you love. So we put our business second, and then with whatever time's left, we put the relationships in our life in third place. Our kids, our spouse, our friends, family, those others, like, well, I got to work, but if I'm not working, then I'll make time to hang out with you. And what ends up happening is we put ourselves at the bottom of the list of important things. So we have rest, we have business, we have relationships, and then we have ourselves. And when you're at the bottom of the list of important things, guess what happens? You get out of shape, you gain weight, you lose weight, you don't feel good, your mindset's all out of whack, you're tired, you're frustrated, you're angry. And what's interesting to me, because I work with so many entrepreneurs and business owners along the way, they're all saying, well, I'm doing this for my family. I want to create a legacy. I'm trying to create a better future for them that I never had. All these different cliche phrases. But how can you honestly say that you're working your hardest to be the best for them if you're not prioritizing yourself? What's the example that you're setting for them? Well, you're working all the time and you're stressed out and you're angry and you're frustrated, and that's not a life that anybody wants to live. And so what I kind of learned along the way is if you ever get on a plane, the first thing they tell you in an emergency, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first. Because if you can't breathe, you're going to pass out. And if you pass out, you're now a burden to everyone around you, including the safety staff that's supposed to help everybody in this emergency. And so many people are just running around with no oxygen mask on, and they're wondering why they're so burnt out and tired. And so here's what the 4-6 really is. If there's 24 hours in a day, and we can all agree on that because we're not flat earthers and we're not going back into where the days all blend together. There's 24 hours in a day. And if there's 4 areas of life that matter, we'll do some quick math. 24 divided by 4 is 6. So if I spend 6 hours each day in those 4 areas, and I'm really intentional about it, guess what? I'm using air quotes for the people who aren't watching us on the video, right? I'm using air quotes. So it's a balanced life. And I know a lot of people hate the word balance, and I had a mentor that always say, hey, a balanced scale reads 0, and nobody wants to be a 0. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of us are trying to find balance. We're so out of whack and topsy-turvy that everything feels funky. So the reason I like the 4-6s is because if you've ever spent 6 hours in bed with your wife doing all the things that you love to do, or working on a project that you really enjoy, you can do a lot of things in 6 hours. Heck, when you're with your wife, I don't know what you do with the other 5 hours and 57 minutes, but whatever your thing is, right? And also, if you've ever spent 6 hours doing something that you really hated or dreaded, it feels like forever. So the way I look at this is, if I spend 6 hours on rest and recovery, if I spend 6 hours on me getting better, getting healthy, working out, development, reading, whatever, spirituality, all the things that help me become a better person, 6 hours in business, you can get a lot of stuff done in 6 hours if you aren't scrolling YouTube and goofing off half the time. And then you have 6 hours with your family. And I can tell you right now, for those of you that listen, if you spent 6 hours every day on the relationships in your life that matter, do you think they'd get better? I promise you they will. And the issue is most people aren't actually tracking or paying attention to where they're spending their time, what they're spending it on, and who they're spending it with, which is why they're not getting a return on that investment that they see as quality. So if you want a better ROI on the only resources you cannot buy more of, cannot win in a poker tournament, and will not get a box of on Christmas morning, guess what's going to happen? Your life is going to improve. So if you do an audit, and this is my takeaway for you guys from this whole long story, every hour on the hour for the next 7 days, put an alarm in your phone and just write down what you did for the last hour and be really serious about it. Don't cheat yourself. I woke up, I drank water, I read the Bible, I meditated, I prayed, I made breakfast, I went poop, ate my breakfast, after I washed my hands, of course, went back, had to poop again. Then I got ready for the gym. Then I went to the gym, and while I was sitting outside of the gym, I spent 10 minutes scrolling TikTok or Instagram or whatever. Get really serious about this. By day 3, you're going to be cursing my name and maybe saying thank you, because you're going to realize how much time you're wasting on things that aren't moving you closer to the goals that you have in your life. And this is where I go back to the sacrifices that you have to make. Is it important for you to be able to watch a TV show and kind of zone out for a little bit? Yes, in moderation. Is it important for you to do the work at your job? Yes, so long as you're not burning yourself out and going nuts because you spend all your time working and none of your time with your family. And the 4-6s is all about just understanding. 6 hours in each of those 4 areas, very, very intentional. Your life will improve. And my client, as soon as he started implementing this, he called me back, I think 3-4 days into it, and he was like, A, I hate you. B, I love you. C, my family thinks you're awesome, because we are now spending more time together every day. And my daughter, who I think she was 3 at the time, came up and said, hey, Daddy, I really appreciate you taking time to hang out and watch this movie with me tonight. And what a tearjerker, dude. I get emotional thinking about it. But that's the kind of stuff that happens. And you don't realize it because as the husband, father, provider, you're setting the example of what these people around you should be doing, thinking, and acting like. And when you take control of your time and you start respecting it, other people start respecting it too.
That's a great point. I've found to be true. If you don't drop everything to be able to accommodate other people's emergencies, other people's lack of preparation, but also if you are able to go into a situation with the kind of clarity where you're not thinking about all the other 500 things that you maybe should, I'm doing air quotes now, should be doing while you're at that family function or you are at that work function, whatever it is that maybe you feel like that function took you out of your normal routine. But you've written several books now in helping train people to be better in sales, do better in their lives. And you've got a new book called Lessons from the Boiler Room. And I want to talk about the stories that stand out, either for you or for other people, because these stories come from your podcast and from the podcast episodes that you've been doing for years. And they're some of the highlights. So in Lessons from the Boiler Room, what are some of the stories that stick out for people?
I think one of the best ones right off the rip, it talks about a young man who was called into an office to help a guy. So he's a podcast production guy. He's one of the guys I met through the Podmatch platform, and I was interviewing him, and he's talking about how when he first got started, he got invited to this big corporate building, you know, all glass windows, and you walk in and you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And he talks about how he walked in wearing oversized khakis and a button-down shirt that didn't fit right, and he was like super nervous because he didn't want to come across as like, hey, you're new in business, you don't know what you're doing. He was trying to give, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but he was trying to give that appearance of, I know what I'm doing here. And he went into the office, had a conversation with this guy. The guy was a little bit short with him and was like, okay, cool, I'll call you. And, you know, if you've ever been in sales, the hey, I'll call you is kind of like a stab in the heart. You're like, oh man, what did I do wrong? And so he leaves, gets a call back a week later, and the guy's like, hey, come back in. I want some more details. And so he throws on his next best button-down shirt and the same pair of oversized khakis, and he goes back to the guy's office, and you know, the guy starts asking him some more questions. He's a little more involved in the conversation, and then it comes down to like, okay, well, how much does it cost? And Kevin's like, well, I think it was like $500 or something. And so the guy's like, okay, cool. Here's a check for $500. When do we start? And he talks about when he gets on the elevator and the door's shut, the tears just start coming down his face. And he's messaging his girlfriend, and I think it's his wife now, but like his girlfriend at the time. And it's like, babe, we did it. Like, we actually freaking did it. And that to me is one of those really fun stories, because I think a lot of people have this idea of, hey, I want to do this thing. I have this passion. I have this skill that I want to take to the next level, but they stay stuck in their box of, yeah, but what if it doesn't work? Or, you know, is it going to make me enough money to be able to keep living the life that I've created for myself? Because we're all guilty of building these lifestyles that are beholden to the career that we have, to the income that we make. They call it the golden handcuffs in the corporate world, where it's like they pay you so much that it would be stupid for you to leave. And I was in a position like that at one point. The thing I say now is golden handcuffs, even encrusted with diamonds and gems, still make you a slave. And a lot of people don't necessarily like that, but ultimately this story is a great reminder that you can step into a new lane. You can take on new opportunities. And if you're willing to just show up and try, eventually it's going to work out, right? It goes back to being disciplined versus motivated. A lot of people are motivated to start a business, but when you're 5-6 months into it and the income isn't flowing like you thought it would, and you're having to make hundreds of calls a day, and you're feeling really awkward because people keep saying no, like that's the part where you have to be disciplined and just keep showing up. And I think throughout the book, that story kind of just repeats itself through a number of different ways. And I'll say one of the funnier stories is my buddy Chris Killey. He used to be in the merchant services business. So he like credit card processing, payment processing, that sort of thing. He went to a building and was talking to the guy, and the guy was real sassy with him and just being kind of a jerk. And I don't remember exactly what Chris said. You have to go back and watch the episode, but or read the book, but he said something along the lines of like, all right, well, if that's how you want to be, man, just keep getting the results that you've always gotten. And the dude picked up a wine bottle and threw it at him and shattered one of those big glass like storefront windows, just completely blew the thing to shards. And
All right.
Chris said that he was like, I guess that's my time to exit stage left, and he walked through the broken window instead of going out the door. And you know, that's one of the wilder stories that we've had, but I think that's what's so fun about the podcast and the book is just understanding that we all have a story, and most of the time the struggle that you're going through now is the story that you tell the people around you. And everyone loves an underdog. We all love to hear about somebody that went through some shit, had to deal with the struggle, and figured out a way to come out the other side on the right side of it to have that success. And that's why I encourage people to pick up the book and read it, because ultimately, like, that's what all the stories are, is from people who had regular lives and just realize that if they show up, work hard, care about people, eventually they end up getting the thing that they want most, which is their version of success. And I'm going to preface this with, their version doesn't have to be your version. And James, if you and I were to go back in time and go to our parents on the day that we were born and say, listen, you have this beautiful baby, what's their life going to be like when they're older and successful? Whatever story your parents told at that time is drastically different than what you're doing right now. So success is very much a perspective, and that's what I think is really important for everybody to know is you can have your version if you're willing to work for it. And everybody in this book, they all worked really, really hard for their version of it, which is why I know if you're listening to this right now and you're willing to be disciplined, you're going to get your version too.
I'm glad you brought that up, because this whole podcast is about the expectations that people had for us and that we had for ourselves as we were growing up, and how quite often none of it worked out the way we thought it would. That's why it's called a joyful rebellion, because you hit a point in life where you checked all the boxes, you did all the things, and you worked really hard, and you look around and you say, oh yeah, that I've got a cool car, that okay, check. I've got the marriage, I got the kids, check. I got that diploma a couple decades back, check. We're good. But I don't feel like I'm having fun at this point. So that's when the rebellion comes in. You have to start figuring out what to dismantle, and it really comes down to what to change. So if someone out there right now is listening, let's say they're 48 years old, and they're like, you know what? I have been wanting a change for a really long time. I know it, and I think the people around me know it. I've been living a long time on the program I've been on, so there's some inertia there. And now I'm hearing James and I'm hearing Drewbie talk about this thing where discipline is more important than motivation. I'm motivated to change. I don't know what that discipline might look like, but one thing I saw in your information, you talk a lot about discipline can depend on systems. And that got me kind of excited, because systems are something I love to implement. Systems sort of make things a no-brainer. And I know if you've ever read, who was it that said the quote? It was like one of the famous books from the last 10 years. He was like, everything will sink to the level of your systems. Like if everything goes wrong in your life, if things go haywire, I think it was Atomic Habits.
I was going to say, it's either Atomic Habits or like one of the Jocko Willink books, because like that dude is very much on systems and routines too.
Okay, I think it was Atomic Habits, because I read that one. I've seen a lot of the Jocko's podcasts and stuff, but I'm like, dude, that's on a whole different level than...
Oh, go read his books. His books are fantastic. Atomic Habits is a fantastic book too, don't get me wrong. But if you like systems, processes, routines, and you like kind of understanding the framework and the mindset behind them, Jocko's books are fantastic. But yes, I love systems, processes, and routines, because ultimately they make my life way, way easier. And what do I mean by that? Well, if I know I'm going to do pretty much the same thing every single day, then I can create consistency. It doesn't require me to be motivated to wake up and go to the gym, because I know that's just part of my daily routine. That's part of my process. So this kind of goes back to what I talk about in the 4 6s, right? It's like, okay, well, if I know I only get 6 hours to work on me every day, how am I going to break that up? And ultimately, what do I want to spend that time on? Well, what's important to me? I got to make sure my mindset is good. So what are the books that I'm reading? What is the content that I'm taking in? What am I listening to? Who am I listening to? And for what purpose? This is, I think, a biggest part of all of this is just asking yourself, for what purpose am I doing this thing? And if you're not asking yourself that question, kind of goes back to the Simon Sinek, start with why. Why am I doing this? Well, because if I do this consistently, I'm going to get X. Well, if I don't want to be 315 pounds again and have to worry about having a heart attack and watching some other asshole sleep in my bed with my wife while my kid's in the other room crying and I'm up in heaven looking down at it, I don't want that. That doesn't sound like heaven to me. So what am I going to do to change that? Well, I'm going to have to go to the gym every day. What does that mean? Okay, well, some days I don't want to go to the gym. Some days it's raining. Some days the gym's closed. Okay, so what am I going to do? How am I going to create a process that prevents me from failing to do the thing that I need to do? Boom. Put it in place. What about, okay, well, if I want to make sure I'm spending time with my kid and my wife, what's the process that I'm putting in place to make sure that I do it? Am I putting them on the calendar every week? Am I making time to make sure that I do the things with them? Because you never find time. This is the thing that I always seem so interested. It's like, well, when I find the time, I'm going to get it done. It's like, when? Where? How do you find, like, how do I find time? Where's the, like, magic X that I go and I open up the treasure chest like Link and Zelda and I'm like, cha-choo! Time! That doesn't happen. So you really have to get clear about, okay, well, what's the system that you use to manage your time? For me, it's Google Calendar. Literally, the calendar is my boss every single day. I wake up, I look at it. You guys can't see it here, but it tells me. It's all color-coded. It's all in blocks. It looks like a big Tetris board. And all I know is that when I wake up, I look at the calendar, and it tells me exactly what I'm going to do at that time on that day. And I just follow the instructions. Because it's kind of like, you ever go to the store, and you're walking through the freezer section and you're looking at all the microwave meals and you're like, oh, well, that one looks pretty good, right? And don't get me wrong, marketing and photography, they do a great job of making it look really, really appetizing on the outside. Guess what? This is social media. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, they all make it look really great from the outside. Yeah. But if you flip the box over, it gives you instructions on how to get that result. Step 1, take it out of the carton. Step 2, probably poke holes in the plastic so you don't blow the damn thing up in the microwave. Step 3, microwave for 3 minutes. Step 4, stir it up and microwave it again. Step 5, and this is the one that most people skip, right? Wait 2 minutes so that you don't burn the hell out of yourself.
Yep.
How many times have you tried to eat it too fast and you're like, burn the hell out of yourself, and now you have to deal with those consequences? Life has consequences. If you're not patient, if you don't follow the instructions, guess what? You're going to have some consequences. But what I know is that 9 out of 10 times, if you follow the instructions on that box, you're going to get pretty close to the meal that was on the front. Now, it's not going to be right out of the restaurant and look as good as it does on the box, but the taste is going to be there. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to get the nutrients, the whatever. And I'm not saying that you should be eating microwave meals all the time because they're not the healthiest. But I'm just using this as the example of if you follow the instructions, you get the result. Same thing with IKEA furniture. You ever had to build an IKEA chest of drawers, brother? What a nightmare,
man.
Same thing, though. If you just read the instructions and do what it tells you to do, you end up getting pretty close to the result. Now, one of those boards might be flipped backwards and have the wrong face on it, and you have to go back and do it again because you didn't realize at the time you made the mistake. But that's the cool thing about life, too, is if you make mistakes, you can go back and reverse engineer what you did and figure out what you did wrong so that you don't do it again. Because if you ever build one IKEA piece and it takes you like 2 hours, the second one, the matching one, you're done in 30 minutes. Same thing applies in life. Systems, processes, routines. If you trust the process, you get much more confident in knowing that you can deliver the result. So I like to try to make everything in my life as simple as microwave directions so that literally all I got to do is show up, check the box that I did the thing, and know that I'm going to get the result at the end of that process.
That's a great way to put it. And Yeah, I like your calendar. I got to show you mine. It's looks very
See?
similar.
My man, I knew we were going to get along, James. That's just it. If it's there, you have no excuse. Now,
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this out there because life be lifing and people be peopling. You know this as well as I do. You have a podcast, so I'm sure you at some point had a guest that was like, yep, I'm going to be there, and then they weren't. And now you have to pivot, and now you have to change things, and now you have to adjust what you're going to do because you're not just going to sit there and stare at yourself for the next hour. You're going to go find other things on your to-do list that you can get done. But I think a lot of people, if life throws them a curveball, they just sit and do nothing. And that's why they end up stuck. That's why they end up not having the life that they want, because they can't adjust on the fly to what life is bringing at them. And that's why discipline is also important, because you could be really motivated to do this podcast today, but if I didn't show up, your discipline is, okay, well, I'm going to go and do these other things, because the motivation to have the conversation is no longer there. So you have to learn how to handle that. And that, I think, is the big part, is being intentional with the time that you have, no matter what comes at you. And if you do have something really important that you want to do, but something even more important comes up, doesn't mean that you can't do the thing that you wanted to do. It just means you have to do it at a later time. You have to adjust and make time for it later in your calendar. And that's why I liken it to Tetris, because I'm always just moving stuff around. Like, yes, I can do this at this time. This is the new priority, so I'm going to move this here, and I'm going to put this in its spot. But until you learn to play the game, you just stare at it, and you're like, I don't know how to get the high score. So you got to play the game to learn. That's how it works.
That makes me curious. When you're working with sales professionals, I would love to know, what is the biggest difference between, let's say, a sales professional who's maybe only been in that world for maybe 2 or 3 years, and they want to level up, they want that growth. But then I want to contrast that with a sales professional who's been in it maybe 20, 25 years, and they're like, man, Drewbie, I've hit this plateau, and I can't seem to push past like what I was doing back in my 30s, and I'm not loving this, I'm not growing, and I need help. What's the biggest difference between those two types of sales professionals?
Young, hungry, motivated is driven by their internal desire for a thing or a place or a goal, right? So they're driven by this reasoning of, maybe somebody told them they were going to be broke their whole life, so they're using anger and fuel, or anger as their fuel and their, drive. Okay, well, when you're young and fired up, like, you can use anger. You can be like, oh, you told me I was going to be broke my whole life. So for me, when like, perfect example, I've had tattoos since I was 16 years old, and like on my hand. So I wasn't even like sneaky kind of. I showed up in high school in junior year and had tattoos on my hands, and all my teachers were like, what is going on here? And I'll never forget, I went to a guidance counselor, because you show up covered in tattoos, they start asking all kinds of questions about your home life, and your parents beat you, are you on drugs? And yes, I was on drugs, and my mom was always great, but my dad was a bit abusive, like here nor there. Point is, they had questions. And I remember telling them, no, I wanted these, I was excited about it, this is who I am, I wanted to express myself. And there was one in particular, and I won't name names, but they said, well, you're going to end up dead or in prison because of those tattoos, like going down a bad path. And I just remember thinking, who are you to tell me? First of all, you ain't nobody special. Second of all, F you, you don't know me. And for early on in my career, I was driven by that. These people all count me out. I'm covered in tattoos. People always question, am I, a degenerate and all these things. And to an extent, I was, just being honest. But I was still motivated and inspired to go out and prove them wrong. You have this internal drive to prove people wrong. But once you've proved them wrong, you can't use that fuel anymore. It's like going from a gas truck to a diesel truck. If you put gas in a diesel, you're going to blow the whole thing up. So what happens as they get older is they've proven everybody wrong. They've achieved the things that they never even thought they could have achieved to begin with. And so they start to question their purpose, their why, on the thing that they do. This happens in real estate all the time. So I'm going to use real estate as an example, because I talk to agents like day in and day out. And The agents that are 20 years in, they've seen so much change in the way that the market works and the way that, social media exists now, and there's all these different approaches to creating success in real estate, and they've always done it the same way they've always done it. And you can't grow doing the same workout every single day. If you never increase the weight, if you never change the pattern, if you don't adjust the path that you're walking, your body becomes used to it. And that's the difference, is that if your body has become complacent and you're just settling for the thing that you've always done, you're going to get the same results you've always gotten. But what happens is there's inflation in life and things change, and so doing it the same way every time, all the time, is not going to work forever. Because people change, the market changes, the world around you has changed. So if you're not adapting to it and understanding that increasing the weight or changing the form or doing a different version of that exercise is going to get you the result that you're looking for, that's why you stay stuck. And I think that the hardest question I always have to ask people, and we're going to use calling the leads as an example, because there's these agents that are like, I'm 2 to 3 years in and I'm excited, but I don't have any leads to call. So how do I get the leads? And it's like, okay, well, let me teach you how to go and acquire opportunity. But then there's the agents that are like, yeah, I've got 3,000 leads and I just don't feel like calling them. It's like,
wow.
What do you mean?
Okay.
Why? And they're like, well, I just don't want to feel, salesy, or I don't want to be aggressive, or I don't want them to think I'm just transactional. And it's like, that's your job. Your job is to serve people and to help them. And all I'm hearing from you right now is that you don't care enough about people to want to help them anymore. And they're like, well, that's not true. And it's like, then why aren't you calling these people who have raised their hand and said, yes, I'm interested in learning more about how you can help me with this specific problem that I face? And they're like, well, it's like, exactly. You're making every excuse in the book right now. And I can't pick up the phone and make those calls for you, or else I'm going to be eating your lunch. And I'm going to be going out to that steakhouse to celebrate the big commissions because I'm the one doing the work to get the result. And I can't do the work for you to get the result that you want. I'm way too expensive for you guys to want to do that, first of all. Second of all, if you're constant, and this is a big lesson from my mentor, like one of the last lessons I learned before I went on my own, you can't ever trust someone else to be your safety net in life. And I know that sounds harsh, and it was kind of harsh in the moment, but now that I look back and I reflect on it, the person you trust the most it should be you. You shouldn't be letting someone else be your safety net in life, because what happens if that person's gone? What happens if they decide they don't want to carry you anymore, that they don't want to be your safety net? Well, you're right back in the only person who can care for you is you, which is why I'm so heavy on you got to take care of you first so that you can take care of the people that you care about. And that's it kind of went off topic, but the difference is the people that have been doing this for a long time, they stop caring about other people and they stop taking care of themselves, which is why they don't have the energy to care for other people anymore.
Ooh, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. Yeah, when you get to that point. I'd love to talk about now the transition in your own life, because one thing I have noticed a pattern since I've been doing this podcast. I talk to people all the time who've been through their own joyful rebellion. And usually what happens is they go through something major in their life where they came to a point, they realized something has to change. And 9 times out of 10, it was them or sometimes it was their situation. But even to change their situation, they had to change themselves quite a bit. And then once they went through that process, once they got to the other side of it, they decided, you know what? I learned a lot in this experience, and I would love to help other people navigate either what's going on in their own life, their own version of it, and give them some of the insights that I learned along the way. And right now I'm on your website. It's called callthedamnleads.com. And that's where anyone could go for looking at your books, looking at your podcasts, looking at some of the training that you offer. But I'm curious, what got you from going through all the mindset shifts that you did understanding that discipline is more important than motivation, setting up those systems, and now you not only did that for yourself, but you help other people do it for themselves. What was the journey there?
I'm going to give you guys the too long didn't read version here to just try to sum it up. But I have 7 books. Read them all if you are interested in hearing my story. But essentially, when I was growing up, I was a drug dealing degenerate. Didn't always have the best examples in my life. I kind of had to figure out a lot of things on how to survive and how to create the life that I wanted. And I got a little older, met a pretty lady, ended up getting married, having my son, going through that whole process. And what I started realizing was the more I started leaning in and learning how to better myself, the more people were asking me how to do that. So where it really started, and one of the biggest jumping points in this whole story was I was selling insurance. I had been doing it for, 3-4 years at that point, and I hit a plateau in my earnings. I was like, man, I want to make more money. What the heck do I got to do to make more money? You see all these guys online that are making $100,000+ a year. I'm over here making 40, which for a drug dealing degenerate that barely graduated high school, like, that was pretty decent, right? I got the house, kid, all the things. But I'm like, why am I not making more? I'm smart, reasonably good looking. What do I need to do? And I went to my boss, and I'm like, hey, man, what's it going to take for me to get to $100,000 a year? Like, I'm way off of it now. What do I got to do? And God loved the man because he gave me a ton of opportunity with this position, but he's like, you just got to be patient. In like 10 years, it'll be your name on the door. You'll be making good money. You just got to be patient. And James, I don't know if you're like me, but like, I'm a very impatient person. If I know it's possible, I don't want to have to wait for it. Like, I want to figure out how to get there as quickly as possible. I went back to my desk and I was kind of sulking, and I went on social media and I'm like, all right, these groups, these guys are all insurance agents. They're making all this money. What the heck do I got to do? And they're like, well, we're generating our own leads. Instead of buying them from the online lead vendors at $25 and $50 a piece, we learned how to do it ourselves, and we get them for $3 each. And I'm thinking, well, I'm a sales guy. If I can get 10 times as many leads, I close at about 30%, I'm going to be making bank. So I start trying to figure out how to learn this stuff. And I go to one group and I'm like, okay, guys, I see you have this program. Can you tell me about it? And they're like, yeah, it's $1,500. Give us your credit card. Let's go. And I'm like, $1,500, man. That's spicy for a guy. Like, that's 2 mortgage payments. I don't really have that. Let me talk to the boss and see if I can get him to buy it. And so I go back to the boss and I'm like, hey, man, I see this is what's going on. I want to figure this out. This is what it costs. Can you help me match me something? And he's like, nah, just go back and work the leads that you have. And I was like, shit. Okay. So I go back to the guys and I'm like, okay, guys, I'm going to pay for this out of my pocket. I'm not going to tell my wife about it. She's going to be pissed. But if it works, it works, and it'll be fine. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're too late. We already sold your spot to somebody else.
Jeez.
That's weird, because 24 hours ago, you were basically begging me to give you my credit card information, and now you're saying no.
Yeah.
What happened, James, is those guys were getting ready to open an agency in my market. And after I talked to them, they started researching and saw that I was one of the top producers. And so scarcity mindset kicked in for them. They didn't want me to have their special sauce. All good and well. So I go back to my desk, spitefully, and I'm like, all right, well, screw you guys. I'm going to figure this out. And I go online to another Facebook community, and there's this guy that's like, hey, I just launched this new software. It's $200 for the beta program. Sign up. I'm going to give you a free Facebook ads training with it. And I'm like, I've spent $200 at the club on a weekend. Like, I can afford $200, man. Like, that's cool. So I buy this software, start using it, start having some success with it, and I'll never forget this woman named Nancy. She's a mortgage officer out of Arizona. Shout out to Nancy. She calls me one day, and she's like, hey, I see you're using this software. You're having some success with it. How much for an hour of your time to hop on a call and help me figure this out? Well, I make $15 an hour plus my commissions. If I was working at a regular factory job, I'd get, double time for working on a weekend or whatever. So I'm like doing this math in my head, and it's like 75 seconds, 90 seconds later, and she's on the other end just waiting for a response. And I finally am like, how about $50? kind of nervous about it, but I'm feeling like that's a lot of money. And she's like, well, I was going to pay you 75. And I'm like, yeah. 75 sounds way better. Like, yeah, let's do that. And so she kind of chuckled and she's like, all right, well, 75 is fine. That's what I was going to pay you. And so, we get on a call a couple days later. Fantastic. It's genuinely like a conversation like this. We're laughing. We're having fun. I'm showing her some things. I'm kind of teaching her a couple of things. And she's like, awesome. This was hugely helpful. I really appreciate it. What's your Venmo? Let me send you the money. So I'd give her my Venmo and $75 lands in my Venmo. And I'm like, oh my God. And I screenshot it and I send it to my wife and I'm like, babe, we did it, right? Like that story that I told from the book, that's not my story, but it is my story in the sense of I had the exact same thing happen. And I remember telling my wife, if I can figure out how to do this like twice a day, I'd make twice as much money and work half as often. This is crazy. That was kind of the Kickstarter for me to understand that my time and what it's worth is determined on what I'm willing to learn and share with other people. My value to the market is my ability to help other people solve problems. And as I kept leaning in on this and helping more people from that community, the guy who owned the software calls me one day and he's like, hey man, what's up? And I'm thinking, this guy owns a $10 million a year company. Like, what the hell is going on? Why is he calling me? Like, well, I had like kind of imposter syndrome, right? I don't know if you guys have ever heard the term imposter syndrome, but I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. And he's like, listen, I need someone like you who can come in and help me help people in my community, because I'm just one guy. We only have a developer and like we don't have time to do all the tech support and whatever. So if you'll come in and just keep doing the things that I already see you doing in public in my community, I'll give you $2,000 a month. And I'm thinking, shit, I'm barely making $2,000 as my salary right now. Like, hell yeah, I'm gonna do that. And he's like, cool. Only thing I ask is that you don't steal from my clients. That's all. I'm thinking, okay, great. So he gives me this opportunity. The week after that, some other insurance agents call me and they're like, hey man, you're doing this stuff and you doubled your production in 1 month. What are you doing and is it legal? And I'm just like, well, yeah, guys, I learned how to run these ads and I'm getting leads for $3 and we're calling them blah, blah, blah. I can teach you how to do it. And they're like, I don't want to learn how to do it, but how much for me to pay you to do it? And I was like, $2,500. And they're like, cool. Where do I send the money? James, I made $10,000 in 1 weekend setting up Facebook ads for these guys. And I was like, holy smokes, whoa, this is crazy. And that's really what kickstarted my journey, was the fact that I did a thing, got the results, and other people asked me if I could help them figure that out too. And I just fell in love with the coaching consulting aspect of helping people solve these problems. Like, I love figuring out complicated stuff. You know how most people have a giant box of tangled wires in their house somewhere and they're like, I will never get to it because it's just a tangled mess? I love untangling all those wires and like cleaning up. I don't know if I have autism or OCD or some kind of weird something on the spectrum, but like that to me is the stuff that gets me excited. So fast forward 5 years, I had spent all this time working with different business owners and entrepreneurs, helping them figure out how to set up marketing campaigns and how to build follow-up sequences and how to create a brand for themselves so that people would see them as an authority and an expert in their field. That's why I wrote all these books, because, hey, what's the easiest way for me to give you all of the knowledge that I can as quickly as possible? Condense it down into some easy-to-consume piece of content, whether it's a book, or a podcast, or a digital training, or whatever it might be. That way, when people are reaching out to me and asking, hey, can I get a little bit of your time? Instead of me having to charge every single person that I talk to an exorbitant amount of money because my time has gotten more valuable based on the skills that I've developed, I now have a resource that I can say, well, hey, 90% of what you would learn from me on a $500 an hour coaching call is in my book for $10. Go read the book first. And then if you want more help, of course, we can take that next step. And that's one of the cool things about doing what we do. And I give you a lot of kudos and flowers for taking the time to create a show like this where people can spill the things that have done well for them and help others see that path. Because you're making a big investment. Listen, guys, if you don't know this, being a podcast host is not like cheap. You don't get paid millions of dollars for it, right? We're not Joe Rogan out here. Like, most of us are paying out of our pocket to create this content, to be here for you, to provide this opportunity. And yes, do we have other things that we may be able to sell you or help you with out there? Of course. But the point is, we're still doing this for the love of the game. And that, I think, is really, to me, what's so exciting about this space, and what gives me that motivation and discipline to just keep showing up every day, is watching that light bulb come on for someone and them realizing that they're going to change their life in ways they never thought possible because of some little thing that I shared with them that I had to learn along the way anyway. And that's why I do what I do.
That's a great explanation. And that's why I love talking to people from all different perspectives every single week, because there's someone out there right now listening to this, whether it is within the month that we recorded this conversation, it could be 5 years from the time we're talking right now. And they just get that little thing and that little insight of something that worked for you. And they might think to themselves, this could work. This could work for me. I could see that working for me. I've had that feeling too. Maybe I want to explore this a little further. And that's what these conversations are all about. And I really thank you for coming on here. We spent about an hour just talking about all of this stuff. And I'm wondering if there's anything that we haven't talked about that you think is really important to leave people with today.
I do have one more story I'd like to share. I'll try to keep it somewhat brief, James, but I think it'll be really, really important for the listeners. So I talked about my journey. I was selling insurance, making 40 grand a year, stepped into this new opportunity, ended up making multiple six figures, like $500,000 a year plus. And from all perspectives, people thought like, dude, you've got it made. You've got the life. This is amazing. Like, you're making lots of money. You're going on private jet trips. You're doing all these things. And I made the conscious decision in 2023 to walk away from all that. And now most people would go, hold on a second. Like, you were making the money you wanted to make. You were doing all the things. You had the life that most people look at and go, God, I would trade anything to have that life. But what they don't know is all the stuff that was going on behind the scenes. All the political stuff going on in the corporation I was working with, all of the stress that comes along with making lots of money, and people seeing you in a different perspective in life, and treating you like you owe them something just because you're more successful than they are. And there was a lot of stress, there was a lot of headache to that with me. And one of the difficult things is, as I was progressing on that journey, I was traveling more. I was going this place to speak and going this place to consult and flying, across the country 2-3 times a month. And it led to a point where that created issues between my wife and I. Because, when you're a good-looking man and you're traveling to events with lots of good-looking people, things happen, right? The people tell themselves stories. So we were like, okay, well, I'm going to take my wife on these trips with me now. I started taking my wife with me. And then we'd be FaceTiming our son from Vegas or from Cabo or from any of these cool locations. And our son's at home with the babysitter and like, cool, I see you're out doing all these things. How come I don't get to go? It's like, well, because it's not really a kid-friendly trip, first of all. And secondly, I don't know if you guys have ever traveled, but this shit ain't cheap. You got to hire a babysitter like $300 a day, right? Because you're not paying minimum wage for someone to take care of like the most important thing in your life. My wife and I started asking ourselves, what did we do when we were kids that we have the fondest memories of? Like, what are the things above everything else that really stand out in our mind? And for us, it was going camping. Her dad had a seasonal camp spot near the racetrack, so she was up there almost every weekend. My family didn't have a lot of money, but when we did get some money, what we did was go camping and celebrate and have fun. And so, like, those memories always stood out to me. At the start of 2023, we bought a camper and we started traveling together as a family. 6 months later, we traded that brand new camper in and upgraded to a bigger camper because you always buy smaller and then you realize you need more. So, like, that was a big thing. Well, around that time, things started changing in the corporation I was with. They were asking me to make some moves, and some people were coming in, and things just weren't really vibing the way that they used to. By the end of 2023, things were so bad in the company that I had made the decision that I need to go my own path. I ended up walking away from a multi six-figure job, selling our big house in Texas, and moving into a 42-foot fifth wheel camper so that we could travel around the country and build a whole new business and a lifestyle. And what's interesting is that when I was talking about what we were going to do, a lot of people said, man, that sounds like the dream. Like just living life and traveling and having all this fun and doing all these things. And yeah, it was a dream. And it was also a lot of work. The discipline that you have to wake up in some super cool location and know that you could just go travel around and see all these beautiful parks and historical sites, but knowing you still got to sit down and do 6 hours worth of work before you get to do that, like that's tough. And going from a 2,000 square foot house with an in-ground pool and all the commercial grade gym in the garage, and we had 2 fridges. Like that to me was always the thing in life. Like you knew you made it when you had a regular fridge and then you had a garage fridge. And I'll never forget buying our garage fridge and looking at my wife and being like, babe, we made it. Like, this is awesome. And yet we sold all of that, moved into this 45-foot toy hauler, and realized that you don't really need as much as you think you do. Because as we were going through our house and getting rid of things, we're like, man, I haven't looked at this thing in 6 months. I haven't touched this in like a year. Why do we even still have this? And the reason I tell that story is because most people think it's absolutely insane to walk away from that much money in a career, no matter how unhappy you are. Like, just stick it out and be unhappy and make the money. That's the wrong mentality, in my opinion. And secondly, a lot of people say that they have a life that they want, whether it's traveling or whatever it is, and you can have it if you're willing to do the work to make it a reality. And that, to me, I think is the biggest piece of that story, is that we saw an opportunity. We risked a whole lot to make it a reality. It's still a lot of work, but I can say with 100% certainty that had we not taken that journey, when we got a call about my wife's dad being sick with cancer, we wouldn't have been able to sell our home and be here in Toledo where we are now, helping him go through treatments and get back on his feet. We'd have been golden handcuffed to that real expensive job and all the income so that we could keep paying that super expensive mortgage payment and all the stuff that we had done to keep up with the Joneses, because we had to learn that mistake, right? We spent money, we made money, we had fun, and now all of a sudden that money is not there anymore. So we had to make adjustments and sacrifices, but it was all for the greater good, because it led us to having the freedom, the true freedom, to be where we needed to be when we needed to be there, so that we could be the people we wanted to be in life, which is servants to the people that we love.
That's a great way to end things. Thank you for sharing that. Drewbie, thank you for being here on A Joyful Rebellion. And I know that people listening got a lot out of this, and there's probably just one little nugget that will, resonate. The thing about it, everyone's so different that this conversation has dozens and dozens of those little nuggets, and one of them is going to resonate with one person, a totally different one's going to resonate with a different person. So thank you for sharing your journey and your stories. I really appreciate having you here.
James, I appreciate the opportunity to run my mouth for a little bit. I am sure that at least one person will get something of value out of this episode, and if you did, if that's you, will you do me a favor? Will you go share this episode on social media? Whatever platform you're on, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, I don't really care. I'm on all of them. Share this episode. Tag at Call the Damn Leads. Say, hey, I listened to this episode with Drewbie and James. I got a ton of value out of it. I think anybody that wants to make a change would get some value too. That would mean the world to me. Because if you're willing to do that little thing, to share this with somebody that it could help, it makes all the time, the energy, and the effort that we put into making it well worth it. So that's my one ask of the listeners.
I love it. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining me today. And if you have an extra minute, I have a favor to ask. Some of you listen to this show on Apple Podcasts, and a lot of you I talk to are on Spotify or Amazon. I'd love it if you would take just a second to leave a rating or a review. It lets the platforms know that listeners are getting value from the show and suggest it to others who are interested in similar content. And as always, if you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a guest suggestion, or just general feedback, I'd love to hear about that too. Connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or at ajoyfulrebellion.com.